Hey, John Gilroy here. Carnegie Mellon says that AI agents fail at office tasks nearly 70% of the time. Today, let's dive into AI, resilience, and the federal government. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. In the virtual studio today is Travis Rosiek, Public Sector CTO of Rubrik, R-U-B-R-I-K. AI agents. Travis, tell me it ain't so. I mean, it's not the answer. It's not the promised land. It's not the answer to everything in the world. Trouble?
It's like the Borg from Star Trek.
Right. I mean, a year ago, we weren't talking about AI agents. 6 months ago, that was the next coming of everything in the whole history of the world. And now with some question marks, huh? And I think our federal listeners should be concerned.
Yeah, I think, every new technical innovation has some growing pains. How do we operationalize? How do we use it? Most of my experience is, getting into the security space and resilience space. Most of those are afterthoughts. So my whole career has really been focused on how we're helping organizations be proactive, think outside the box, don't just react to compliance requirements, start, do your own planning and prioritization to, be resilient. And, I did that in the government space pretty extensively, and been trying to fill some of those gaps with novel technologies, which has brought me to Rubrik, which is on the forefront of this space.
Yeah. Most people, I think, listening know about Rubrik, and maybe there may be people never heard about it, maybe new people in the field. Maybe give us a thumbnail sketch of what R-U-B-R-I-K, what Rubrik's all about for our listeners.
Yeah. So for those who are customers, thank you very much. For those that haven't heard about Rubrik or, in the process of learning, it's kind of I would call it the next generation kind of data backup and recovery capability. So if you think of, the legacy approach, organizations have been doing data backups for decades. But Rubrik is really designed with the modern era in place. So if you're in the cloud, in SaaS applications on premise, how do we make that process easier, more effective? How do we reduce the burden to do the backups? And then the way it was built, leveraging zero trust principles, kind of security by design, is able to help organizations survive cyber attacks or, insider threat type disruptions or software bugs. So your data and systems can survive that. And then building cybersecurity capabilities on top of the backups, we can help you recover to a known good state incredibly fast. So we actually have some customers who have recovered from after a ransomware attack before they've even gotten the ransom note. So that's pretty amazing.
I've talked to hundreds of people, and when I think about you, I think of the word immutable. Wow, you kind of own that word, especially for agencies that have to have solid backups in case bad things happen, and you don't want to recover something that is troublesome in and of itself. So it's a great word. I think that'll resonate with the audience right there. Immutable really sounds really powerful.
Immutable. And then just the last one, most organizations think about backups, but they don't think about what happens when they need to use them. So on the recovery part, I think Rubrik's, one of their huge differentiators is that you can recover, and then the speed at which you can recover and get back online, like that's a metric that a lot of organizations, recovery time objectives, that they're not, they don't really have in place, or they're not adequately testing. That's something I've uncovered over my journeys.
Let's focus more on Agentic AI. I mentioned that earlier, and I kind of facetiously talked about Agentic AI, but it's a serious topic, and what we're finding is that it's not what it's maybe billed as. Tell me about some of these government programs of implementing Agentic AI, and I guess let's start off with what benefits it offers.
So I think the potential is incredibly great. I think the ability to do very intensive tasks, labor intensive tasks, people get tired, they get fatigued, they make errors, they fat finger things. I think it's going to be pretty tremendous in doing a lot of those type of grunt work. Or just high volumes of data analysis. So I think there's tremendous amounts of potential. I think, we're not going to go from point A to point B and be 100% accurate with it. There's a lot of growing pains. A lot of organizations I mean, I kind of use the analogy. We've been working on the IT space for decades now, and we haven't really done a good job of making it reliable, making it secure. So AI just amplifies the scale, the scope, the speed. So the speed of mistakes, the exposure to data, the potential impacts. So I think organizations that aren't being proactive, designing, in their architecture, how do we build fail safes? How do we build in controls and mechanisms? When the agents do something you don't want it to do, or they modify data, how do we prevent all of those catastrophic things from happening? So back in my government days, when I used to do testing on, security testing on weapon systems and other things, you kind of start building scenario. What's the worst possible scenario? So in that case with AI, I'm not seeing a lot of that yet. I think everybody's rushing to move to AI. AI is not the end state. It's not the destination. It's a tool that helps you solve a problem or, achieve a mission. So I think more focus is on implementing it these days, not so much how do we achieve the end state. And it's going to be, that resilience side, the AI resilience, cyber resilience, so that they can do their jobs more efficiently, more securely, and more reliably.
Yeah, I hear the term a guardrail, tossed about in this whole area, and initially they talk about guardrails just for AI itself, but with this next level up of grouping different types of agents together, I mean, sometimes you get 3 or 4 things together, and you get a result what they call unintended consequence, huh?
Yeah, high school chemistry class. You mix the wrong things up, and you may have to evacuate the lab.
Okay, we got promise of new technology. Everyone's madly in love with it. A lot of people are trying it. We see some studies like Carnegie Mellon saying that some AI agents may have some problems here. So do you have recommendations for our listeners for agencies planning on AI agent deployments?
I mean, I think, and being in the IT space and security space for as long as I have, I think the first plan for it not to work as planned. So, plan,
That's the plan?
So I like to take the devil's advocate approach. So, zero trust architecture, my question I ask folks in different speaking events is, do you trust your zero trust architecture? So in this case, plan for the agent to go rogue, or, we've seen some things where, the agents are lying to the end user. They're potentially deleting code or deleting traces of their activity. So make sure you have in these, the immutable aspects, having audit capabilities. So historically, human features, functionalities, we have logs. When you log into systems, you access systems, you scan your badge to go into a building, you log into a system, move money around. There's all these logs. What AI is really going to change dramatically is the oversight and how we audit those functions. So AI is going to happen, basically the speed of light almost, right? Incredibly fast. And it's going to make these decisions. And, as you mentioned, one agent feeding another agent feeding another one, these complex tasks, there's a human cannot be in the loop. It's going to be way too fast. So we have to build security and resilience into that process such that we don't slow down AI, because that's the benefit. So, we have to have a human on the loop versus in the loop. And then as part of the architecture, when you build these out, you have to have ways to observe it, have the visibility of what it's doing, and also prevent the, like cyber threat actors, right? So historically, they like to, when they compromise an environment, they like to cover their tracks. They come in and delete logs or spoof logs and make it look like activity that didn't really happen. So, think about that perspective. The AI agent potentially is, maybe a software supply chain attack, an insider threat. Think about some of those same principles in today's world. How can we put some of those things in place, as guardrails or barriers, so that we can effectively have a human on the loop, and we can, meter, monitor, and then potentially revert back any damage, retrain the algorithms, retrain the models, fix the damage that was done. So I think those kind of architectural components. Obviously, historically, the government waits on compliance requirements, or certain regulated industries do. But in the realm of AI, like that, it doesn't exist yet.
if I went down to the Pentagon and held up a sign, resilience, I'd get all kinds of applause. They love that resilience of the DOD. They love it a whole lot. And if I went there and said, what about backup? They're going to say, of course we back up our data. You know what they're going to say. And maybe if they're wise, they'll know about Rubrik. But I think if you got a bunch of federal CIOs in a room and you said, I would have a backup strategy. Of course we do. What about backing up your agentic AI? What? I mean, it's just so new. It's not. I think it's a brand new concept. Resilient. I mean, this is a brand new concept from my perspective.
Yeah, it's all the sci-fi movies from the 80s and 90s, Terminators and such. So I mean, we're not there yet, but conceivably, if we don't design things properly and do things in a smart way, it definitely could have some catastrophic effects. And I think back to the buzzword of today, I think AI and immutability are probably two big things. So immutability is making sure that we can, whatever happened can't be the record of it can't be modified, right? You can go back and recover. And then the other, I think, attack vector that I'm kind of concerned about from an AI perspective, and more for the national security audience, is data poisoning when it comes to AI. So talking about AI agents making the wrong decisions, if they're built or trained, testing, training sets of data for AI and the testing components. If an adversary is able to poison data, so inject malicious data into those models when they're built. So when the agent goes out and does its work, it has this, kind of tainted or malicious nature to its behaviors. So it won't operate as functioned, and it's very stealthy from that perspective. So I think, getting into that immutability part of how they train the data, having that very tightly controlled and auditability of the data that goes into the models is super important. So I think the data aspect to AI is something that doesn't get mentioned about enough. So
Simon Sinek says start with why, and I think we got the why here, but I want to move on to how. So how can agencies build resilience into their agentic AI programs?
Sure. So I think, I think we're, on the precipice of, bleeding edge technology. So I'd say first and foremost, stay current on evolving technologies in the space. Rubrik's kind of leading that way with its recent Rubrik Agent Cloud announcement that happened in mid to late October. I think looking at the assuming plan for worst case scenario. So I look at zero trust architecture as, hey, let's plan for worst case scenario. In the case of IT, the adversary assume breach mentality, right? So the adversary has access to your environment. So in the same principles around leveraging agentic AI, let's plan for these worst case scenarios. So the agent makes a bad decision. It does bad things. It deletes critical data that we need. It modifies data. So there's a lot of scary scenarios that I won't I won't say on this thread, depending on who's listening. But having the ability to gain visibility of what the agents are doing over time. I think just fundamentally, you can't protect what you don't know you have. You can't really have trust in things if there's not transparency, if there's not a record. So making sure that your architecture has the ability to monitor what is performing, because it's happening incredibly fast. So being able to go in and build monitoring capabilities, and you can't monitor if you don't have the foundational architecture that allows for that visibility. So you can measure the effectiveness, the trustworthiness of all of your agents and how they work together.
Cybersecurity 101, I guess the first principle is start off with what you just said. You can't protect what you don't know is what there. So you start off with an inventory and you find out all your different nodes and applications and whatnot. And I think people, it's pretty much best practice, pretty much accept that. But I don't know if we're at the point now, just so recently into this, if agencies are really going to try to find out which agents are active, what data or applications they touch, and what changes they make. It's the next level of, you're looking in your garage and you have two bicycles and a car and a tire pump or something. But this is the next level of inventory. It's more abstract and much more difficult to grasp, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no, it's kind of like Lewis and Clark. There is no map. So there's there's no map. There's no compliance requirements kind of guiding organizations. So they're going to have to, figure it out for themselves to some degree. So there's going to be some growing pains for sure, which I think is, evidenced by the Carnegie Mellon study. It's, still in the early stages, and, it's never going to work incredibly well the first go round, but it'll definitely improve over time. I think the, kind of the Lewis and Clark piece of it, it's going to be, organizations are going to have to be proactive and build these plans in absence of strong guidance. The other story I kind of look around AI is the old story from like grade school time, the tortoise and the hare. So I think, organizations that just rush to get to, hey, we're using AI, and they don't build that plan, right? That like the hare in the race, they might get to a certain, hey, we're using it, we have it deployed. But if they don't do it in a methodical way that's well thought out and building for success longer term, they're going to have some issue and not finish the race, so to speak. And the organizations that are more methodical and building out the architecture, the plan, the fail safes, they're gonna be slow out of the gate. But that consistency, that process, that thought that they're investing is going to pay dividends in the long run.
I'm glad you talked about Lewis and Clark. Those guys headed west up the Missouri River. Well, just going to follow the Missouri River up to the mountains and try to make a way across. So they at least had some orientation. But I think this word disorientation is what's happening here with agentic AI. I mean, if you look at this Carnegie Mellon study we mentioned at the beginning here, the report shows that some users are becoming disoriented, choosing incorrect shortcuts and struggling to complete simple multi-test tasks. That's what's happening because it's so brand new and you don't know. And all of a sudden, if Travis Donuts makes a mistake, so what? But if someone in an intelligence agency makes a mistake, well, that's a serious problem, isn't it, Travis?
Absolutely. You think about the different ways that can happen. So the system itself, the data that's chosen to train it, where is that data coming from? So I think the other approach is, you shouldn't trust 100% whatever the responses or actions are. You get a random phone call, somebody you don't recognize, you don't trust everything they say and do, right? So these agents are making decisions. They're conducting and completing tasks. You've got to go through a process to make sure you can trust it, and look for those edge cases, and build trust over time. So I think there's probably going to be, I haven't seen a whole lot created yet, but or standards, but like what's the accuracy of this model? Like what's the level of trust? So I think as we get into the future, those are going to be other parameters of, hey, does it create tasks? Are they accurate? I know other areas around pattern recognition, so identification. So if you think of like biometric systems and identifying this percent match of this person, or maybe ways to defeat some of those detection mechanisms, like that kind of rigor that's been in place for decades now, still needs to be applied to this space. I think it's so. Oh, I can type in a question and get an answer. I think everybody's so excited that they get an answer back quickly, that they're kind of forgetting that maybe the emotional reaction is to blindly trust it. So I think we need to temper that and kind of build in some of those mechanisms to assess the response and then make sure that it's giving you a trustworthy answer. And I think the other misconception with AI is the explainability aspect. So a lot of the scientific or mathematical principles around AI systems is it's not always going to be able to, or most likely not going to be able to give you that explainability piece because of how it works and how it works so quickly. So it's not going to be able to explain it like a human could, because it's coming up with those answers and decisions in a completely different way that's really foreign to how the human mind works.
I'm in the classroom a lot, and when I give a 40-minute lecture on something, I try to sum it up with 3 points, and I'm taking notes, listening, talking about Lewis and Clark, and talking about being disoriented, and I think, you know, I think the three phrases that come into mind here in looking at controlling agentic AI is you got to make their actions visible, auditable, and reversible, because you got to see what they are first, and you got to know if they're going bad, and finally you have to reverse and back out. And so very parallel to what's done with data backups, but much more complex and sophisticated in this world, with changing every day. Visible, auditable, and reversible. Good summary?
Absolutely. I think, and the underlying, word I would say to all of that is just the speed at which this is happening. Like, it's milliseconds or less, right? So, being able to conduct tasks that might take weeks or hours, we're talking all of this being done in, a second or seconds. So the speed at all of these scenarios, and the amount of data that's growing, it's definitely a whole different scope than what we're accustomed to. So from all of our processes and how we've worked to govern things to date, like, this is really going to change the dynamics and the models going forward.
So Travis, in the classroom, I always say 3 is more than 4. We talk about 3. Let's stay on this 3 theme here. So what 3, just grab 3, what 3 considerations for agencies as this agentic AI continues to evolve? What 3 considerations do you think they should take down little notes and maybe think about in the future?
So, I think most organizations tend to start their planning from where they currently are to some degree. So, hey, we have this data, what can we do with it? And I think in the case of something that can, go off the rails incredibly quickly, or you don't have a lot of control on it, I think the other aspect is maybe starting on the other side of it. So what is the desired end state? So what do we want it to do? What kind of risks or errors? What's our latitude there, right? Like, what are some of those worst case scenarios? Like deleting data sets, modifying data sets, giving us a completely wrong answer. So kind of you start building those guardrails or fail safes, start thinking in there, like, what is the range of output that I'm comfortable with? And then what are the outputs that would be catastrophic for my organization? So, I mean, many organizations don't have, life-threatening consequences, but, many of the federal government does. So depending on the application and how you're using it, all of that has to play into a part. So I think the AI risk component and the risk management piece of it is super important. So I think kind of starting from that end and working backwards to your current state is a good exercise for organizations trying to think about, how do I use this effectively? And also, how do I prevent some of those, disaster scenarios? So there's been a lot of examples of organizations who have leaked some of their IP to the internet, or, exposed it inadvertently. So very catastrophic for that business of unauthorized, they didn't plan for that scenario. They didn't really know how to expect it, because they were just moving to AI without really a plan. So I think kind of starting at that point is a good way to kind of help mitigate some of those risks where there is no map yet.
A wise man once said, start with the end in mind. Maybe that summarizes the whole idea of what you want to get at. And that's what you just said. You said, well, what do you want to get at this at the end? Do you want to be faster? You want to be more adept? You want new information? I can't keep up with agents and agentic AI and all kinds of cyber attacks and threats. So I don't know if I'm a boomer or a doomer. So what about you, Travis? You look 4 or 5 years down the road. Where do you see this heading? You think they'll get a handle on it and be much more judicious about applying it, or are there going to be serious mistakes made? What do you think?
I mean, the way it's evolving, it's hard to even think about like what next year. So
I know in 5
years down the road,
I can't say 5 weeks. I mean, really, there's so much going on now. I mean, every day there's new threats coming on, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And just the advancement of the technology. So I think to answer your question, probably all of the above. I think, the tortoise and the hare analogy, right? The different personas or types of organizations pursuing it over the next few years. Some are going to, be on one end of the spectrum and, probably be in the news and have a lot of catastrophic effects. And then we're going to have, others that are more methodical, that are building in these guardrails and building in for adverse scenarios, that will have tremendous amounts of success. So I think, I would caution folks of making a bet on today, right? The tortoise and the hare, right? Maybe whoever's leading at the moment probably won't be the leader in 3 to 5 years from now. It'll probably be somebody else that you were, potentially is way behind the curve.
Yeah.
But they're going to catch up and surpass some of those early adopters because, they're just, hey, we just have to check the box and say we're doing AI. And, some of those early explorers were, eaten by bears and other things. And, maybe they weren't prepared for that.
There are people who are listening to this podcast, they're walking their dog, they're in the squat rack, they're cleaning their garage, I don't know, maybe doing inventory of their garage, and they may want to have some more information. Now, earlier you mentioned trust, and I think your company has a new product involved with trust and AI acceleration. What's the name of that again?
Yeah, so we recently just announced the launch of Rubrik Agent Cloud.
That's it. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And so if you're listening to this, you can go to Federal Tech Podcast, type in Rubrik, and download that, because it seems like I think the tortoise may win in this battle. I mean, it seems if you slow him aside, it can always back up. I mean, this is classic software development 101. You always go back to original source code. I mean that's what has to happen here, and I think that's the only way to avoid some of these bullets. And the bullets are coming fast and furious, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, trustworthy AI is our end state, our goal. So, that's going to be critical. And, I think we've really struggled with securing AI the last couple decades, and building resilience and all those security controls there. AI is basically adopting, trusting everything that's been in place to date. So we're thinking about something that we've not really done a good job with, as a whole. And we're basically, hey, we're going to put this new technology, AI, on top of kind of this mess, and we're going to expect it to give us great results. So, I think tempering the expectations and also getting folks to also go back and look at what are all of the trust relationships that, as we're deploying and implementing Agentic AI, what are all these other things that we've kick the can, or we just, on the commercial side, we sign checks and, we have cyber insurance, and all of those shortcuts, I think, will potentially come back to bite folks who aren't really thinking about this, systematically and fully understanding or appreciating not just the adversarial, cyber threat actors, the people, but, they're using AI. They're going to adopt, and they're already using AI much faster than organizations that are using it for defense. So they don't have controls, they don't have rules. So I think from the AI arms race, that's going to be the other variable to this equation, is this legacy environment that all of the AI is running on, and the adversarial use of AI are going to be two other big drivers of what the next 5 years is going to look like.
Oh boy, next 5 months. I can't wait to see it. Heads up, January for everybody. There's so much exciting stuff here. Well, we're running out of time here, unfortunately. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Travis Rosiek, Public Sector CTO for Rubrik, Rubrik. Thank you, Travis.
Great to be with you, John. Thank you so much.